Chris. Today we're gonna check out the iPhone SE. Now, this is an important phone. You may not be interested in it personally, but you should know about it because it's really a game changer because of what it can do for the price. So today we're gonna talk about the battery life. That's the most requested thing that people wanna know from me about this phone. We're gonna talk about the camera performance. We're gonna talk about the actual performance with its new chip that actually performs better in a certain category than even a MacBook Pro. Let's start with the design. Where else will we start? I mean, it's a big talking point here because this is the same design, basically, as the iPhone 8, which has been around since 2014. Now, let's just get this out of the way. I don't love the huge bezels on the forehead and the chin of this phone, but I do like that they chose to go all black for the front, even if you get the white phone design. And the reason I like that is because at least it hides the camera components. Now, one of the reasons that this phone is so affordable, and we're gonna talk more about the price at the end of the video, is because they're able to reuse this same design. So this older design, it's one of the things you're just gonna have to put up with at this price point, but it's really one of the only major complaints. So on the back of the phone, you just have a nice, simple, centered Apple logo. Now, that is a little bit different from the iPhone 8 because the iPhone 8 said iPhone on it, and the iPhone SE doesn't. Now, that's such a small detail, I don't even know why I'm mentioning it. It's just something I'm pointing out, I guess. But speaking of small, this is a smaller phone than I thought. For some reason, I was thinking that this was gonna be a pretty big iPhone SE. And I think a lot of people were under that impression, like this isn't the small phone that you thought it was gonna be. But actually, when I held it in my hands for the first time, I was really surprised. It's pretty small, actually, smaller than my iPhone 11. And when I compared it to my wife's iPhone SE, the original, it was only like barely bigger than the original, like insignificantly so. Now I'm talking about the physical footprint because the screen on the new SE, that is significantly bigger than the old SE. Although while I'm mentioning screen sizes, it's also significantly smaller than the iPhone XR. That has a lot more screen real estate vertically. I mean, even my wife, who's been holding onto her original iPhone SE for dear life because she likes smaller phones and for several other reasons, was pretty receptive to the size. And so I think people who like smaller phones are still really gonna like this, just to be honest. Now, somebody on Twitter actually asked me if the new iPhone SE was too small. And I gotta say, I don't think so, but I tend to like my phones to be as powerful as possible and as small and as portable as possible. You know, that's my mobile thing. I want it to be small, but capable. When it comes to my tablets, I like to have those as big and as powerful as possible. I got the 12.9-inch iPad Pro this year. But I would actually like to see an iPhone 12 that was this size. Although, when you go down in size like this, the battery does suffer, and we're gonna get there in just a little bit. Now, in terms of the actual user experience on this phone, let me just say, if you've never used an iPhone without a home button, like that has Face ID, then you're gonna feel right at home. But on the other hand, let me just say, it's a good thing that this phone isn't targeted at iPhone addicts or people who are really into super phones with all the bells and whistles, the flagship stuff. Because once you've experienced things like Face ID or tap to wake or swiping up to go home and other convenient gestures, then the older design of the iPhone SE does feel like a step back, at least to me. But again, this phone isn't targeted to super phone addicts. It's targeted at people who like smaller phone designs, or people who want to save some money, or people who are thinking about switching from Android, or who don't want to switch to Android. Which is kind of ironic because a lot of Android manufacturers have kind of gone in the opposite direction. They kind of started out making budget handsets and have now started pushing towards the flagship price point. Now, for all the people that are interested in this phone, here's the good news. All of the flagship features that I just mentioned a second ago, those really turn out to be more like nice to haves rather than absolutely necessary in order to have a really great phone experience. Now, in my early testing, it was clear right from the get-go, really, that I could do all the core tasks that I do on my iPhone 11 on the iPhone SE. All the things that really matter in a phone experience are there on the iPhone SE. In fact, when you're talking about Apple's flagship iPhone right now, the iPhone 11 versus this iPhone SE, it's really like a luxury car versus a standard car. Yeah, a luxury car is gonna be nicer to ride around in than a standard car, but both are gonna get you from point A to point B, and that's really what it's like here. So the iPhone 11 has extra lenses and Face ID and tap to wake and all those things I mentioned. And that's kind of like having less cabin noise while you're driving on the interstate, or leather seats. They're nice, but not having them doesn't mean that you can't have a really nice iPhone. Alright, so the chip inside of this thing is the A13. It's the same chip that's in the iPhone 11 and 11 Pro, which means it's really fast, has a lot of performance, and it's a big upgrade from the A12. It's not like in the new iPad Pros, where this year in 2020, the jump was pretty small. Like, this is a big jump from A12 to A13. And here's what's mind-blowing. For $400, the A13 in the iPhone SE actually bests a top-of-the-line MacBook Pro in a single core thread in benchmark testing. Wow. Now, let's talk about storage. The base level this year is 64. That's much better than 16. But here's what I have to tell you. Don't get 64. Even if you're trying to save money, at least upgrade to the 128. In 2 years or 3 years, you'll thank me. And if you don't, then in a couple years, I'll just be like, I told you. Remember this part of the video with me pointing in your face. So let's jump into the camera. A lot of people might be like, well, there's only a single lens and sensor in the back, so this must not be a really great photo or video shooter. But I'm happy to tell you, that really isn't the case. This thing takes great photos and even better videos. Now, one area where that new A13 chip really shines is when it comes to portrait mode photos, which yes, you can take using either the selfie or rear camera, and that's thanks to some amazing machine learning chops. Now look closely at these two portrait mode photos and try to tell me which one came from the iPhone 11 and which one came from the iPhone SE. Now I'm gonna tell you in 3, 2, 1. Ding, 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 the left one is from the iPhone SE. Now something to point out is that the default iPhone camera app only allows you to shoot portrait mode photos with human faces in them. So you're not gonna be able to just hold up your favorite drink and get a nice blurry background, or even a picture of your pet. Or can you? Actually, you can with an app called Halide, which does give you a depth chart and depth information that will let you take portrait mode photos of just about everything. Doesn't always turn out great, but here's a good example of something that turned out pretty decent. All right, let's talk about low light photos. Now this is one area where early reviewers have been saying that the iPhone SE just doesn't quite hold up as well as they would like. And yeah, I wish that low light photos were a little bit better here too, a little bit less noisy. But really, if you think about it percentage-wise, most of the photos that I take, at least, are usually in pretty well-lit places. There's no night mode here, but I don't end up using night mode all that much on my iPhone 11. I mean, there's probably times where I go months without using my night mode on iPhone 11. Now, it's gonna be different for everybody, but what I do at least recommend is getting an external photo light, which is made specifically for smartphones for a pretty decent price. I'll list a couple down below, but at the end of the day, no, you can't have it all for 400 bucks. You just can't. And so am I impressed for the price point with this camera? Yeah. Now, the low light is a little bit disappointing, but you know what's absolutely insane with this camera is the video quality. I mean, I could sit here and do my YouTube channel with nothing but this phone if I had to, and it would turn out great. People probably wouldn't even care or notice. So just to show you what I'm talking about, here's a really short B-roll segment shot with the iPhone SE's rear camera using Filmic Pro of a few things just laying around my desk. It's not bad, right? Kind of cinematic. Now let's talk about the battery. This is the thing that a lot of people are really gonna care about. And you know what? This iPhone SE, it doesn't just look like the iPhone 8, it also shares the same battery size as the iPhone 8. So, long story short, the battery life on this phone isn't gonna blow your mind. I wouldn't say anybody's gonna say it's amazing, but it'll get you by. But at least it's capable of fast charging. Now, it doesn't come with a fast charger in the box. It comes with a kind of slow 5-watt charger. But I'm gonna list up a fast charger down below that I think is a good recommendation, not a bad price, and probably like an instant buy for you, or the first accessory you should get, maybe aside from a case, because I think it's gonna be well worth your money to be able to quickly top off that battery, especially as this battery starts to age. Now, in the battery and charging department, one thing I'm really excited about is that this phone now is capable of wireless charging. Like my wife with her old iPhone SE, I've got wireless chargers laying all over the house, but she can't use any of them. I'm trying to get her to upgrade here because it's just really convenient. Now, my review unit came with this really nice all leather official Apple case. It's black, it matches perfectly, and I would say if you're wondering about getting it, usually I really gravitate towards ultra thin cases. This one is just the right amount of thickness, I think, to offer some protection, to make the phone a little bit less slippery, to leave all the ports accessible, makes the buttons still nice and clicky. So if you want to get this budget phone but still kind of make it feel a little bit nicer, add a little bit of luxury, I think this is a great case to actually buy, Apple's official leather case. And if that's not your thing, I will link up some ultra thin cases down below too. All right, so let's talk about the price. This thing starts at $399. $399. It's just hard to complain about this with anything that you're like, oh, that's not perfect. Yeah, but it's $399. If you want the core iPhone experience at a budget-friendly price, this is just like an instant recommendation. If you still have the old iPhone SE or even the iPhone 6, this is an instant recommendation. I would put it like this. This is the budget iPhone of your dreams, and maybe the budget phone of your dreams, because unlike the Android ecosystem, this phone is gonna get updates for years and years to come. If you loved the original iPhone SE because of its size, you like smaller phones, I really do think you're still gonna love this one. And if you're an Android user who's kind of curious about dipping your toes in the Apple ecosystem, then yeah, I think this is a great place to start and see what it's all about. On the other hand, if you've been using an iPhone 10 or an iPhone 11 and maybe it broke and you need a cheaper replacement, or even if you've been using the new iPad Pros and their Face ID system and all the gestures, you might find it a little bit tricky to go back to this home button setup. All right, so thanks for watching today. If you want to, I would love to hang out with you every week, every Friday, in fact, on the Daily Tech After Party. That's our podcast where we talk about all kinds of things related to the Apple ecosystem and the tech world and even daily tech. You can see what's going on with me. And I would love to connect with you on Twitter and Instagram as well. I'm at Daily Tech, spelled Daily T-E-K-K in both of those places. And one final plug, we have a new site. It's applehype.com. Check out what's new, what matters in 15 seconds or less every Monday through Friday on applehype.com. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Later.